This morning, Israel invaded Rafah in southern Gaza in defiance of Joe Biden. The Biden administration recently withheld military aid to Israel, saying do not invade Rafah, and a ceasefire is the right way to go. But Israel doesn't care what Joe Biden thinks. They don't respect him, and they're moving in either way. It's currently happening right now. Now, the question is, why is Joe Biden bending the knee and saying, stop, Israel, stop? Is it because Israel is engaged in wrongdoing, perhaps? Is it because Joe Biden thinks the war is over? I don't know, maybe. But I think it's fairly obvious the driving factor in this is the far left riots sweeping the country, and Joe Biden is bending the knee to far left extremism. This is what they serve, and they cheer it on. When Donald Trump was forced into the emergency bunker during the Summer of Love, the media and the left laughed. They called him Bunker Boy. And now here we are. Anti-Israel protesters vandalize World War I memorial, burn American flag after cops block group from reaching star-studded Met Gala in New York City. The anti-Israel campus protests are no longer just campus protests. They are nationwide riots. And we're seeing more and more videos pop up across the country of riots and violence and clashes with police. Joe Biden and the Democrats have made their bed. Now, I do want to talk to you about the scope of the war, its expansion, but I think the domestic policy is more important and more pressing as it directly affects us. The question, of course, being, how is this going to affect the presidency? How will Joe Biden respond? And we'll start with what happened last night. Now, for those that were watching Timcast IRL, you already know far left extremists tore down the barricades in New York and tried to storm their way to the Met Gala. For those who are not familiar with the Met Gala, because I'm mostly not either, it's the Super Bowl for women. As Libby Emmons tells me last night on the show, no, it's the Super Bowl for fashion. And I say, yeah, okay, but like basically women, right? Sure. Here's the story from the New York Post. Anti-Israel protesters vandalized a World War I memorial in Central Park on Monday and burned an American flag after a mob of more than 1,000 marchers was blocked by cops from reaching the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where the star-studded Met Gala was in full swing. At least one America-hating vandal torched Old Glory at the site of the 107th Infantry Memorial, the base of which was defaced with graffiti reading Gaza in large black letters. Others plastered the statue's bronze soldiers with stickers of the Palestinian flag that read, "Stop the genocide and the apartheid, free Palestine." Some of the protesters climbed atop the infantrymen and waved Palestinian flags or draped them over the figures. You can see some photos we have, of course, of the violence and extremism as it's expanding. They didn't make it to the Met Gala. Of course, they were blocked by police. They say the anarchy near the corner of 5th Avenue and East 67th unfolded with no cops in sight, as a large police presence had mobilized about 15 blocks north at the Met to ecensure that one of the biggest nights in fashion wasn't crashed by any anti-Israel protesters. Another Central Park monument, the Civil War General William Tecumseh Sherman bronze statue in Grand Army Plaza, was also vandalized Monday night. Now, that's really weird that they would do that. Why they would vandalize Sherman? Because he was a Union soldier. Sure. Free Gaza was graffitied in red letters on the base of the memorial, and a Palestinian flag was affixed to its front. I'm sure what they'll tell you is that Sherman, he had that march to the sea where he, just destroyed people's homes and livelihoods because we call it scorched earth. And what they're going to argue is during the Summer of Love, when they're destroying statues, they'll say, oh, but it's because it's slavery. They never really explained why they tore down Hans Christian Heg, I believe he was Norwegian, I could be wrong. Or Danish? I don't know. He's Scandinavian. And he came to this country because he thought slavery was bad and he fought to end it. They destroyed his statue. And now Sherman, what they'll argue is, well, Sherman was a colonizer. That proves it. And he was just fighting to support white supremacy. Even though he fought to end slavery and he was in many ways a kind of a bad dude, but, it is what it is. The reality is they want to destroy our institutions, they want to tear down our statues, and they want to replace our culture with something else. This is not about Palestine. They do not care about Palestine. I will stress this again. They act like they do. Many of them do. That's fair, but most of them have no idea what they are talking about. Why? It's fire. It's chaos. These are individuals who are just bored, listless, and they're listless vessels. They have no purpose. They have no mission. And so this becomes it. We end up with videos like this. A.G. Hamilton on Twitter, X, says, insane video from MIT. In Arabic, they chant, Palestine will be Arab and death to Jews. Then in English, they chant, we don't want no Zionists here, and that there is only one solution, Intifada revolution. Don't look away. Well, this video, as I described yesterday, is the black and blue or white and gold dress of protests because it is split. Some are arguing they weren't saying death to Jews, they were saying death to Zionists. Well, in English, they say we don't want no Zionists here. But in Arabic, they do say, no one's disputing this. Some are saying, I speak Arabic and I didn't hear them say death to Jews. And other people are pointing out, saying they're saying death to Zionists, not death to Jews, right? I'll tell you this. I don't know. I don't rightly care. In the original tweet, Retzef Levi says, quote, death to Zionists, quote, from the water to the water, Israel will be destroyed. We say openly that we don't want any Zionists here or in Israel. We will release Palestine with blood. Just some of the chants at MIT pro-Hamas encampment. The masks are off. I don't know why. I guess what people are saying is they are hearing. It's really hard to hear exactly what they're saying because they're just chanting. Let's see if we can. Here you go. All right, I'm over it. Some people are arguing that they're saying Yahudim or something like that, which means Jewish people. I don't know. I don't speak Arabic. I don't rightly care because the distinction between there is certainly a distinction between a Jewish person and a Zionist. But either way, these are people on MIT campus saying people should be murdered. That's it. Now, let me draw a distinction. Some people have said, but Tim, what's the difference? People on the other side are saying death to Hamas. Yeah, okay, listen. A Zionist, in its purest definition, is a person who wants to establish a Jewish state, a state of Israel. Hamas is a governmental military faction engaged in military activities. The general concept of Zionist is not militaristic. They'll call them colonizers, but you could have a person in the United States who is a Zionist who does nothing for Israel and just complains about how he wants a Jewish state, and that's Zionism. To claim that a person should be killed for their beliefs is very different from saying that a military foe must be defeated. By all means, hate Zionists, criticize them all day. I really don't care. But there is a difference here. Axios breaks it down. The Rafah assault threatens to be Israel breaking point for Democrats. Yeah, Joe Biden's shown himself to be impotent. He has no influence. Israel doesn't care. And suspending military aid to Israel's done nothing. Now, I wonder if Joe Biden will get impeached over this, but I really don't think so. And maybe not so much because they won't do it, like they don't want to hold Joe Biden accountable, but more so, I don't think Republicans want to give Democrats the opportunity to swap him out. You know what I mean? Axios reports, Democrats in Congress are furious as Israel moves into the southern Gaza city of Rafah after they and President Biden spent months trying to prevent such an operation. Really? So you mean Joe Biden's biggest donors? And, you know, this was a big story yesterday, but I'll pull it up to make sure that we have the source here because people might doubt it, but we'll throw it in just because. Pro-Palestinian protesters are backed by a surprising source. Biden's biggest donors. Biden's donors are supporting the anti-Israel protests. Biden's biggest donors are they're Democrat donors. And now all of a sudden, because I want to make sure this is clear. These people are funding leftist causes and not just Joe Biden. All of a sudden now Joe Biden is on the side of Gaza and anti-Israel. Democrats in Congress are furious. They and President Biden spent months trying to prevent such an operation. A full-scale invasion could be a sea change moment for Democrats on Israel and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, with whom relations have become increasingly strained. I think it's going to further erode Democrat support, one House Democrat engaged on the issue told Axios. Another expressed profound disappointment that Netanyahu apparently would rather prolong this war and has forsaken the hostages. Well, I have an honest question. Considering the defiance of that Israel is throwing in the face of the U.S., considering Biden and Democrats defying Israel's aims, I wonder if the Groyper and white identitarian factions will swing full Democrat and support Joe Biden in this election. Because we got a super chat last week. Someone chatted that they would vote for Joe Biden if he came out against Israel. I would simply describe that as Israel derangement syndrome. Much like people are saying you can't vote for Trump, he's evil. People are willing, and they'd be willing to vote for Joe Biden because of it. You have people who are saying they hate Israel and Israel is evil, and they would vote for Joe Biden because of Israel. And that's just derangement syndrome in the equal way we describe it. Joe Biden, one of the most crooked presidents we've ever seen, a man that many conservatives have claimed didn't actually even win the election. And now, and I'm not saying everybody, I'm saying there was a guy who said, I'd vote for Joe Biden if he came out against Israel. Well, he did. Biden repeatedly is coming out against Israel. Biden barred a military aid shipment to Israel. So are these people who hate Israel and the anti-Semites, I'm not saying the same group, but many, big overlap, they're going to vote for Joe Biden now? I wouldn't be surprised. Israeli forces moved into the city on Monday on a limited operation aimed at seizing control of the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza, Axios Barak Ravid reported. At the same time, the Israeli Defense Forces have been conducting airstrikes on Hamas targets in the eastern neighborhoods of Rafah. The invasion comes as Israel says it remains far apart from Hamas on a deal to release Israeli hostages in Gaza and to institute a ceasefire. Biden and Democrats have long feared that an invasion of the city, in which over 1 million Palestinian refugees are sheltering, would be a humanitarian catastrophe. Groups of Democratic lawmakers have repeatedly called for the Biden admin to consider restricting weapon transfers to Gaza to either head off or punish the Rafah invasion. The Biden admin put a hold on a shipment of U.S.-made ammo to Israel last week, the first such halt since October 7th. What they're saying. The Israelis should, over time, root out the people who perpetrated October 7th. But collectively, we have a huge issue with the humanitarian situation, House Intelligence Committee ranking member Jim Himes told Axios. Himes warned that an invasion of Rafah would move hostage and ceasefire talks in the wrong direction. Rep. Haley Stevens, a Democrat, a staunch Israel supporter, told Axios, "We are obviously very concerned about the continuation of this war when we feel so close to reaching a ceasefire and seeing hostages returned." One House Democrat who has pushed for Biden to condition military aid to Israel said the Rafah assault has the potential of making our case for us. Another House Democrat said the Biden administration has intimated that they're going to publicly criticize Netanyahu over a Rafah invasion. And at that point, they probably will start conditioning or curtailing arms. Rep. Bowman, a vocal critic of Israel, told Axios that all of this makes things worse for Israel in the long run, in terms of how people perceive Israel on the global stage. The other side, Rep. Brad Schneider, a Democrat, told Axios he has grave concerns about Israel's security. Hamas has said they will attack time and time again. Schneider said Israel has to do everything it can do to minimize civilian casualties, but the cards are in Hamas's hands. They have to make the right choice for their people. Well, let's break it down, my friends. As you know, and I've just pointed out now for the third time, the biggest supporters, the donors backing these groups are Biden's donors. Biden, of course, is now bending the knee. Biden said to tell Netanyahu ceasefire is best way to protect hostages. This from yesterday at 6:42 p.m. A U.S. National Security Council spokesperson, speaking on condition of anonymity, says that in his call with Netanyahu, Biden reiterated concerns about an invasion of Rafah and said he believes reaching a ceasefire with Hamas is the best way to protect the lives of the Israeli hostages held in Gaza. Ceasefire agreed by Hamas is far from Israel's requirements, Netanyahu says. Joe Biden, alongside Hamas. Now, don't get me wrong. Biden, it may be fine to say he wants an end to hostilities, a cessation of conflict. The problem, as I see it, is you've got a war without end. You've got a war with no end in sight. Too many times, and this is Hamas's own fault, they've said, okay, ceasefire. And then they've broken the ceasefire and began firing on Israel. So why would anyone believe they legitimately want a ceasefire? It's been described in many ways as Hamas attacks Israel. Look, it's been a war for 100 years, okay? Hamas attacks Israel for a variety of reasons. There's terror attacks, there's intifada, etc. And then Israel retaliates with crushing force, being the victor in the war back in, I think it was, 47? Or was it, I think it was 47. And then what happens? After the beatdown is so brutal, Hamas goes, ceasefire, ceasefire. Israel says, okay, ceasefire. And then Hamas immediately launches rockets again. What do you do? I'm not here to tell you what Israel or Gaza or Hamas or anybody should be doing. I have no idea. I'm just telling you that happened. And now what's going to happen is Israel's going to say, no more ceasefire. The boot comes down. And of course, civilians will get caught up in this. Coleman Hughes on Joe Rogan made a very apt point. He said the issue with civilian casualty is that in Gaza, they've done something that is rare in conflict, and that's they've mixed civilian with military population. I mean, naturally, that's the only way I'd imagine it would function. If Hamas built a military base, Israel would probably just blow it up. So this means that Hamas, as a military faction in the Al-Qassam brigades, are intermingled with civilian population in apartments, in hotel, or I'm sorry, in schools and hospitals, probably hotels too. And that means Israel's going to blow them up. That's it. Now, what I find truly fascinating is Biden's refusal to side with Israel on this one. That's strange, because I am reliably told by so many obsessed people on the internet that Israel actually controls the United States. I suppose they'd make the argument, this proves it, because now, even when the U.S. says no, Israel does it anyway. Well, that's Israel controlling Israel. In fact, I'd argue Joe Biden desperately trying to stop Israel shows he's defying Israeli interests. But there are some people who just live in that world, absolutely obsessed. And that's many of these protesters that are on the ground vandalizing property and destroying things. NYPD arrests Gaza war protesters rallying near the Met Gala. Many of these people don't know what they're protesting. Some do. Many of them do. I'm assuming the Arabic-speaking Muslim protesters know exactly what they're protesting, and this is what they care about. But I can tell you that these college-age liberals have no idea what they're protesting. The funny thing is, one of my favorite stories from Occupy Wall Street is when they would chant anticapitalista, anti-capitalist in Spanish, and most of the people had no idea what they were chanting. My favorite story from this is the guy who was like, abi, nabada, dida, bista. Yeah, gibberish. Because he did not know what they were saying, because they would go, anti-capitalist. That's what they would chant, right? And so this guy is chanting gibberish, and I'm streaming, and I was like, what are you chanting? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, what are you saying? Like, what's the chant? He's like, I don't know. They're just there. Mindless, listless vessels, having no idea what they're mad about, but trying to fit in. Idle hands, devil's playground, as it were. But you take a look at what's going on now with Joe Biden and the Democrats. I'm sorry, I just got to lay this one out once again for the people who think that Jews in Israel control everything. Pritzker, Rockefeller, Soros are funding anti-Israel protests. Tell me again, this world you live in where Israel controls everything, or you think it's Jews who control everything? But I thought Soros, many people said he was just, they also say he was a Nazi. Okay, well, look, I don't know. What I can tell you is these people are funding the far left protests that hate white people, that also hate Jews and hate Israel, because what they're really interested in is destabilizing and destroying this country. That's it. It's not for Israel. It's barely against Israel, but it's seemingly against Israel. They just want to destroy U.S. foreign policy. And Joe Biden's in on it. These are his donors. I wonder what this will mean for Donald Trump, because I don't know. But Trump says he's the most pro-Israel president there's ever been. Now we see him hanging out with Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson, of course, supporting funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The rumor is Donald Trump has already chosen Marco Rubio as his VP. I don't know that that's true. This is what people are muttering behind the scenes. And now above the scenes, as it were, because I'm saying it on this show. If Donald Trump announces, based on this rumor and the things that are being said about it, if Trump announces Rubio as his VP, Trump will win. Not because Rubio is a good choice, not because Rubio is, going to provide a demographic that Trump can't reach, none of that. But because of the deals being worked behind the scenes as it pertains to the U.S. and foreign policy. And what that really does mean is that there will be limited resistance from the deep state if Rubio is the VP. At least that's what I think. But for all we know, Trump says no, and it turns out it's J.D. Vance or who knows what. But a lot of top men, as it were, have been saying it's going to be Rubio. We'll see. I don't know if I'm not supposed to say that or whatever. It's not like I've talked to anyone at his campaign or I want to stress this. I've not talked to Trump about it, or I only met him briefly for 30 seconds. And we talked about, he just said I had a good face. And, but I just mean like people who are in politics have been saying the rumors they're hearing are that Trump has already picked Rubio. Again, this is not coming from an official campaign source or anything like that. That's why I'm like, I don't know that I believe it. It's just mutterings. But based on the rumors, if Trump does come out and say he picked Rubio, I think this backs up the other elements of the rumors, which suggest Trump wins November. We'll see. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.